Ready? Okay.
Let's go.
So I am Caroline Bruder, and I am a publicist and a brand marketing person for 25 years. And I've been working in the entertainment industry for a long time, mostly music. And I got into the cannabis space about 3 years ago because I didn't find that the entertainment industry could support me and my family anymore, and I thought that there was going to be something better for me in the cannabis space. And so I have worked with a bunch of brands, and they're all startups, and there's challenges there, but it's very exciting. And I have a really, really, really good group of people here from all walks of life of the entertainment industry, media industry, branding industry that I'm very excited for you guys to meet. I'll start at over there. Shannon.
Stage right.
Pretty close. Shannon.
I'm so sorry. I knew I'd blow it.
I'm Shannon, partner in a group called the Right Side Consulting Group. We do primarily consult across the design, cultivation, distribution, and branding aspects of cannabis. Currently running a facility up in Sacramento, so if anybody ever makes it up to Northern California, give me a shout. Give me a shout afterwards. We'll give you a tour. He'll give us a free product. In fact, we got, as long as I'm allowed to, I've been promised it's legal. We've got samples for smart questions.
Yes.
Next to him is a good friend of mine who is an amazing person, Michelle Shane. Michelle Shane was the producer of Catch Me If You Can, those movies, and iRobot. And he has a new cannabis business that he will be talking a little bit about, and talking about what it's like to be a very, very successful producer in the movie industry and getting into the business.
What else can I say? So we're coming from this from a media marketing overview. We haven't launched, we haven't started yet. But we have a lot of interest in this space.
Okay. So next to Michelle is Susan Soros. Susan Soros actually just produced one of the most amazing events, cannabis events, that exists in the country. I do a lot of these things. It's called the State of Cannabis, and it was in Long Beach last week, and she knows a lot about the industry, and she's going to start off the entire conversation to give all of you just an overview of what's going on in the industry, and then we'll talk about how the convergence of entertainment and cannabis work. But she's gonna do that. Anyway, go ahead and talk about Green Oasis, which is really cool.
Well, we'll see if we can get to that. So I'm a recovering Orange County soccer mom, Republican Mormon leader. Thank you. So cannabis saved my life, and it absolutely changed my life. And when I was finished raising my 3 children, I devoted myself to giving back to this amazing plant. So how I do that is by producing educational and elegant events to change minds, because my mind was definitely programmed to think that cannabis was a terrible drug. Cannabis was, like our federal government thinks right now, today, that it's a Schedule I drug equal to heroin. And it has no medicinal value, which is just crazy. But California has decided to regulate cannabis, and we are living in a time right now that is so exciting, and I hope that you guys are here because you are either working on content or you are thinking about working on some content that showcases cannabis for what it is, because it's an emerging industry. It's a different lifestyle. It's it's the catalyst for how the world could be. If you look at the end of prohibition of alcohol and all of the characters that Hollywood found and made these great movies like The Untouchables, Bugsy Malone, Scarface, Bonnie and Clyde, Public Enemies. I mean, just amazing blockbuster films about a period of time that isn't even close to what we're going through right now. We are about to regulate cannabis in California, which is big fucking news. It's a big story, and there are characters out there, characters that are deserving of gigantic blockbuster films. Why are we missing the pot point? I don't know, but that's why I'm here. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I love you. Excellent. So next to Susan is Dean Arbit, who's a ghost in these kind of forums. We're lucky to have him here. He rarely talks on panels. And he is the producer of the ICBC, which is the International Conference for Cannabis Business Conference, and also the publisher of Smell the Truth, which was the foundation of how people found out about the cannabis industry through the San Francisco Chronicle. And Dean was the one that orchestrated all of that. So, welcome, Dean.
Hello, and thanks for hanging out. So yeah, I was a media guy that wore a suit for many years, and then ended up selling out of that business and getting into cannabis, starting to work with Hearst, which was kind of an interesting experience, and then got into the event space. So I'll be able to share some very interesting sort of viewpoints with you guys. Looking forward.
Great. And then we have Joshua Oden from Prohibit. Prohibit is like one of the biggest content creators in the cannabis industry for lifestyle. They have an amazing e-zine, basically, that blows my mind every time I see it. Joshua, why don't you tell everybody about your space?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So Josh Otten, Prohibited Media. So we launched Prohibited.com about 2 years ago. We're basically the largest video-based cannabis-focused media publishing platform right now. We're distributed in over 250 million homes on Roku, Apple TV. We have a lot of interesting partnerships with more traditional media partners, including places like the Dean. And so our focus is creating original video content that we distribute through our platform and along with other media partners. On the Prohibited Media side, we're working with over 62 brands, doing everything from branding and design to commercial production. We have a full-on studio in Culver City, and yeah, we're growing. It's been a fun, crazy 2 years.
Yeah, so if you already have a brand, actually I was going to ask raise of hands, who has already a brand in the cannabis industry in this room? Just a couple of you. How many of you are wanting to get into the space? And do you want to get into the space in the media entertainment industry, or do you want to be a grower? Media.
Don't
okay.
grow weed.
Okay, don't grow weed. So you know what? That's the best way to start this whole conversation. How do people that are all of us from music, film, TV, get into the space with our skill set? Anybody want to answer that quickly?
Well, I got in because of my career in the film business. And I know that sounds weird, but if you look at the parallels between the creation of the video business and the creation of the dispensary and the cannabis business, it's almost parallel. Video started with mom and pop stores. Then the Blockbusters of the world came around and got rid of the mom and pop stores. Then Netflix came around and got rid of Blockbuster. And that took a period of almost a decade. In the cannabis business, we're at the mom and pop store stage right now. There's going to be, when it goes legal here in California, there's going to be big players that are going to come in and absorb them, and then it's all going to go online. But that's not going to take a decade. That's going to take a couple of years. So there's great opportunity if you can see the growth of the marketplace.
Thank you. Great. Susan, do you have a commentary to that? No? No?
I could say on the media side, so, personally I got involved. I have a nice relationship with the plant for about 25 years. from friends who are growers. Unfortunately, a friend of mine just lost his house, but he's safe up in Santa Rosa. But yeah, so I've always kind of been a fan, and I had an agency, a traditional agency, was also in content for 17 years, and 3 years ago, just realized that the same, similar to what Michelle said, is that you're going to have consolidation. Cannabis brands are going to have to behave in the marketplace the same way that the alcohol brands and other vice brands do, which means they're going to need to integrate with branded content. They're going to need to figure out how to market and support their brands through online digital initiatives. They're going to have to essentially behave the same way that any other major brand is going to have to behave. And we looked at the fact that no one was serving really what we think is going to be 80, not just we, but I think the industry thinks it would be 85 to 90% of the marketplace, which isn't, the hardcore, I'm going to cannabis and, dabbing 10 times a day, consumer. I think it's going to be more of reflective of, frankly, what's even in this room, and no one was serving that on either the media side or the content side. So that was kind of where we saw our niche. For other people who want to tell stories or who want to be on the media side, I would just say, be great storytellers and find what drives you.
So I think that is really great, that people can have their ability to tell their stories, but, you need to scale that and make a big business out of it. How do you make a big business out of something that is not federally legal yet?
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on that. And so a lot of my background is from companies like P&G and Google, where we do kind of big, broad, mass awareness advertising. And I think I heard a stat, I think it's now 44 states have some form of at least medical legislation now. As that continues to grow, continues to become adult use, yeah, you can't transport, you can't necessarily sell across lines, but you're still going to have much bigger players coming in, setting up operations in multiple states, selling within those states. So even if they're not moving the product across state lines, the brand necessarily can translate across state lines. So as you think about from a media perspective, where you can start to play in how you really scale, is helping them build that brand and how you do that at scale, where they have local operations, but national awareness type marketing and advertising.
So when I used to work in the music business, we used it as the Tracy Chapman way that they did it. She was not making it big in global or nationally. So they figured out, let's just try a market here and a market there that might like her music. And I think that's what we're talking about here, because you have to go market to market and make it big there, right? Is that how it works?
A lot of it, if you look at just look at the power of social networks and the way they work, right? Is you can have friends in New York City who are telling you about something cool, and you know about it without being in New York City, right? It can happen the same way here, where you can take the scale media provides, and you can advertise effectively. I'm a grower, I sell cannabis. I can take my brand and I can set up a growing operation in New York, a growing operation in Arizona, a growing operation in California, and I have to operate and sell each one locally, but I can definitely capitalize on economies of scale and advertise effectively across those 3 states through media, be it distribution or with you can take the same content, replicate it, et cetera. I think that's where the opportunity is from a media to really make the money is.
But tactically, how do you do that? That's what they want to know. How do you do that tactically?
Well, I'd point out one quick thing, though. I would say, look, California is the 5th largest economy, or 6th, depending on what happens in the UK, in the world. And we have more people than Canada that live here. So we could all get very fat and happy and just operate out of Los Angeles and Oakland and San Francisco for the rest of our lives. Now, that being said, there are multiple challenges to operating across state lines, and one could be to set up different co-ops or based on state regulations, and the challenge there is going to be multiple. Or you can create a brand and license it, and there's other challenges there in terms of continuity and product and safety and everything else.
Well, so look, at the end of the day right now, if you want to build a big brand, there's enough marketplace where you can go beyond one state. The message can be pretty much synonymous. But you've got to have, there's fragmentation with your operations, and so it's a pain in the ass, and it's going to be expensive. That said, the original question, why I came and why I wanted to work here was, I figured I was pretty competent and I was good at what I did, and so I was looking at different sectors, and I thought that there was real cool, nice folks in this one. And obviously a significant opportunity. But I've found that to be the case. So
Dean, how do you, if you've got a brand and you actually have something that's really great, how do you like lift it up and make it happen? Processor, if you're doing it online, processor issue, I don't know if any of you are doing that, but that's a challenge. How do you, what is your like advice?
So I think what's happening is that this industry it's like normalizing. So it's the same sort of constraints you're seeing here as you see everywhere else. It's capital and access to capital. And then it's also, it's obviously the fragmentation with the legislation is what makes it a little tougher. But how do you do it? Right now, I feel like it is wide open as far as going in and with things like SEO, getting strong with social media, getting strong endorsements with influencers. I think right now the sector's in its infancy. So if you've got a good product, which I think is the key to any business, I don't think you can dress up something that doesn't work. If you've got a good product, this is a place right now where you can reach an audience.
It's actually the best time to be doing it because big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol are not allowed to be in the space. So you can develop a brand, you can get into the marketplace without having a billion-dollar company as your competition. And you can create a brand, and they're not going to be out of this market for long. And when they come into the market, if you're smart enough, you can be part of them.
So wait, Michelle, how does that relate to the entertainment industry, like parallel?
Well, entertainment is the key to everything because entertainment sets trends. And I'll give you a perfect example. 10 years ago, if you turned on the TV and you saw 2 women kissing or 2 men kissing, you would be outraged. Today, you turn on the TV, it happens all the time. No one thinks anything about it. Have we matured as a public, as the audience? Or is it that because entertainment has slowly brought this into becoming the norm, that it's become accepted? The same thing is happening with cannabis. People are smoking joints on TV, and the person they're talking to is not reacting. And that is a subtle way of bringing a product to market and also making it acceptable. And just watch over the next 3-4 years. Look, the center of the entertainment business is right here. With this state going to recreational cannabis, it's going to be all over the place. I mean, you can count 20 shows today that are on the air that feature cannabis.
So this is actually one of the things I was thinking of as we were coming up to the panel, and I know I'm supposed to be talking, not asking questions, but since you brought it up, that's one of the things I was thinking about, right? And you look back, even the Breakfast Club had them smoking a joint in a movie, right? And that was in the 80s. So one of the things I think is critical to making this more mainstream is getting away from reminding people about the stereotypes. And you look at a lot of the content out there, and it is very stereotypical. Like even Disjointed, as funny a series it is, it's poking fun, it's satire, but it's reminding people about what the stereotypes are, right? So how do we get away from the stereotypes and focus more on making it mainstream as just part of the entertainment?
Okay, I'm going to switch up a little bit, only because Harvey Weinstein's in the media. So how do you deflect out Harvey Weinstein from being like, I'm going to be in the business? All of you are such professionals, and I realize that people ebb and flow because of sort of energy, but seriously, money talks. So how do we deal with those bad actors, as they say in this business, and how to know how to even advise startups? Don't work with that person.
So
how do you deal with that?
I think that's a great point. There are bad actors in every business. The one thing that we need to be very cognizant in this space is that we're held to a higher standard, and that's just how it works.
And I've found that being new to the business, that people that have been in the business for much longer, have been very open and in sharing, which is very rare for any other business. And I think
It doesn't happen in the entertainment.
I think it's because it's a new business. And yes, we're competitors, but in essence, success breeds success. So if you can help someone to the next step, and you then help the next person to the next step, at least till the business becomes,
Well,
the
we're all
Procter and
helping
Gamble's
people.
of the
We're all
world.
helping people. I mean, that's part of what sort of goes back why you get into this thing, is because it ends up generally starting for a lot of folks that started early and that are successful now. It was cause-based. It wasn't to jump in to sort of monetize. And so people love this thing. And so when you love what you do and you think you're helping people genuinely, it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, I'd also point out, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Also, I would say that you need to do your due diligence, because this is a subject that has been in the shadows for a long time, and it does tend to draw some charlatans. I've seen some crazy articles and content, and it's like if you just Googled that person for 5 minutes, you would see that they're just pump and dump scam artists. Really, why are you pushing this content forward? There's so many characters in this space, and you can find some really interesting stories. But Google for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I would say there's two things. One is, start, with what you can handle. So we try to have a very diverse organization, not because it's PC, but because it makes good business sense. So we hire with diversity in mind. We always hire the best candidate, but if you do that, you're going to get the best candidate that is going to bring something unique to your organization, and that, whether it's youth or age or different, cultural backgrounds, those things, just especially on the media side. I mean, you're just not going to be successful. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would you not want to have a youthful, forward-thinking, progressive viewpoint and people around you? I'd say the second thing, and I would echo both what everyone else here is saying, is the cannabis industry is amazing at self-regulation. There's not another industry, I think, that brags that their sort of up-and-coming consumers are using the product less. So what do I mean? I mean that what you're seeing in the media right now is they're saying, hey, as you legalize more and more, teens are using this product less. Now, in most industries, alcohol, tobacco, they would say, oh no, well, we don't want to promote that. That's, sugar. They want to figure out a way to actually attract youth. But here we are saying, hey, look, actually we want legalization, recreational or medicinal, is helping to keep young kids away from this product.
That's a really, really good comment, and I'm curious, do you think as it gets more normalized, as Dean says, will that change as advertising starts to be accepted? Do you think it'll change?
Well, I think it's going to be everywhere. I mean, I think you're going to have CBD in Coca-Cola, and you think you're going to have THC, and whether it's synthetic,
when people learn about what THC is, it's really not so bad. But
right. So I mean, it's hard. There's not like I wouldn't normalize. I wouldn't compare it to alcohol, because I just don't think it. I mean, it's a vice. It's considered a vice drug, but I think it's not comparable in certain ways. But I do think the more anything's regulated and you control the marketplace while allowing access through capitalism, then ultimately you can regulate who has access to it, as long as you don't restrict it to the point like you have a black market. So
think of Portugal. So Portugal 8 years ago legalized heroin, and the EU went crazy. They said, you're going to become the heroin destination of Europe. Everyone's going to come to you.
Because junkies love flying places, right?
Exactly. No, they'll take the train, they'll walk, they'll get there, it's
Right.
free
Right.
heroin,
Right.
But then they legalized all drugs. And the reason they did it was they had the highest AIDS epidemic in all of Europe, and they had a very, very high count of heroin users. Today, they basically have taken AIDS off as a major problem in their country, and there are no new heroin users, because there's something to be said about, don't touch that, it's not legal. You can't take that, it's not good for you. And when you're young and adventurous and want altered realities, you often jump into that pond. By making it legal and by making it accessible, the mystique is taken away, and it allows normalization.
When you also are treating the issue, you're not treating people like criminals. You're going to treat addicts like like a lot of them are either mental health issues or whatever else, so you're treating them differently, and you're going to battle actually the epidemic in a different manner, which is not a
So
crime
let's
issue.
get Trump to delegalize,
Right,
decriminalize
do it.
heroin.
Yay, let's do it.
Good luck.
Schedule 1.
Well, so just one.
Okay.
Let
Okay,
me
go
add just
ahead. Yeah,
the
yeah,
one
go
thing I
ahead.
wanted to add on that, just from a grower's perspective. I mean, we do as a community, the good actors absolutely self-regulate, but you have a bunch of people who don't. And the one big kind of drawback or negativity to a lot of cannabis is the pesticide use on it. And so for the ones who are regulated, who are legal, we're adhering to a very specific, green, clean, organic standard. A lot of people out there are using chemicals or pesticides where the active chemical, when you light on a fire, turns into cyanide. And so the more we can focus on the testing, getting it out there, getting it more ubiquitous of the good product, the less of the stuff that's been grown with Eagle 20 sprayed all over it there is.
Yeah, so for this panel, honestly, I last time I did this panel was in the spring, and everybody it usually veers off to like, these are really like interesting, like not interesting, but important things to talk about. But I want to bring it back to entertainment. So let's talk about documentaries about organic growing. Are those like gonna like get funded? Well, no documentaries funded, but I love documentary people. But I mean, really, I mean, so what you're talking about is education, and those are the things through the media that we need to educate through, right?
So I think through the media, through education, but you can also build it into entertainment, like a pure entertainment. It's very easy to tell these stories and weave it into just a movie or a show or anything like that. And similarly, I was thinking about the other stories that make CBD so powerful, the Charlotte's Web type stories. Mm-hmm. And how do we get away from just the pure, as good as the Sanjay Gupta documentaries were, how do we get away from the cannabis documentaries and start telling the more human side of the story versus the cannabis side of the story, if you will?
So I think part of that is there's CBD and then there's THC, which is associated with just sort of a different
Euphoria.
Correct. And I think that right now
lock.
what's happening is that there are folks that are trying to interweave cannabinoids into functional daily life, and I think that's where a lot of things are going. And
I was going to say, from a storytelling standpoint, we went up to True Humboldt. So Humboldt, there's a collective of about 240 farmers. They call themselves True Humboldt, and they're saying, hey, how can we market ourselves as a brand? We're selling mostly flower, and we're competing, and people are going to the market, and they're going to these 17, 18, 19, 20, however old the bud tender is, who, obviously over 18, but they're young bud tenders who are making, not a lot of money. They may be undereducated. That's their touch point to consumers. So how do we connect with the consumers before they show up there and are influenced by somebody who, frankly, may not be there next week? And they're spending a lot of time educating these bud tenders, quote unquote, who may not be there in a week. And so how do you educate consumers? The only way we can do that is through stories and content. And so what we realized was when we went to True Humboldt, we're like, look, you guys are growing your farm, you're growing organically, biodynamically, you're green collar workers, you're multi-generational, you have these farms, they're running their own fire engine. So the stories are there. So it's like, that's exciting, because we don't have to make up anything. We could just sit there and shine light on how they operate, create a docuseries, and then show to consumers, if you care about farm to table, if you care about biodynamic, if you care about these things that influence how you shop and purchase, here's a brand that you should care about.
I love that you brought that up, because you have funding to do your storytelling. So maybe people out here have ideas like how to debunk like any kind of like cannabis is horrible, in other words, how do you get like funding for a cannabis like documentary or short story or something? Like, how do you sell that? I mean, that's probably one of the big questions, in this group. How do you get the funding? to sell
Well,
to people.
you go to a cannabis brand that is investing in their products and say,
Aren't
do
they
you-
so busy with their own startup that they're
Buy
not
10
really
minutes.
interested in?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Buy 10 minutes.
they may be, but if they really are investing in their brand, you can only ignore media for so long. So we hear it. I mean, we hear a lot of it. Hey, look, I don't have that much money, or I can't invest in content right now, and we understand that we're all startups here. But the reality is, at a certain point, if your sole marketing is PR and packaging, then you will lose, period. There is not a single product in the market under any sector that can operate under that. So eventually, the story that you want to tell from our perspective on a digital side is going to be align with the brand, and that brand, because that brand is going to align with the story you want to tell, whether it's
So you're talking
CBD.
sponsored advertising.
For the most part,
basically.
yes, sponsored or branded content. That's a way. That's not the only way. But as an example, we work with Defonce. They had a really unique situation. They test for pesticides. They kept testing their chocolate and their THC, and they kept getting passes, no problem. And then they made these beautiful, super tasty 2-milligram blueberries. And then they would test it one more time, and they got pesticides. And all of a sudden, these organic blueberries had pesticides in them. So here we have the chocolate and the THC and everything down the line was actually better tested and regulated than the organic blueberries, which were supposed to be regulated and tested by the California state government.
I think that's like such a huge other conversation. Like, it blows my mind, right? I would love to have a whole
But there's a
panel
story.
on
But
that.
that's the key
That's
is there's a
crazy.
story there. So the story there is to show how the cannabis industry is self-regulating better than the agricultural industry, which in California is probably one of the top 5 pieces of economy in our entire country coming out of California. And so if you draw a parallel there, that's a way for Defonce to show, hey, look what we're doing for you, Mr. Consumer. We're actually not only delivering you pesticide-free chocolate and THC, we're delivering you pesticide-free blueberries, because it won't make it beyond our shelves.
Well, or another way to do it is to say, so again, you go back to the cause and you say, you can't, you've got insomnia, you've got menstrual cramps, and generally the client that you serve, being on the media side, this is what our products combat. So there are a lot of ways to sort of position yourself in the marketplace to succeed.
So how do you get funding in Hollywood? You have a story that everybody wants. You have Bonnie and Clyde, and we have stories in this industry. And the thing is that there's really no, for these brands, there's really no great way to get their brands out there, because let's face it, advertising and marketing is still a big fucking question mark. Almost like 2 weeks ago, there was a bill that made it through the California House unanimously that we couldn't have T-shirts that had cannabis brands on them. That happened in California. So think of this as free talent. There's so many amazing stories out there, and they want to give you their story. That's the only way they can get their brand out there.
I'd also say look at it from the other perspective. Like, we're talking a lot about cannabis brands, cannabis content, but can you find cannabis, especially in California after legalization, is just another consumer product. It's something people use in their daily habits, et cetera. Can you find a brand that wants to relate to its consumers through cannabis as one aspect, right? So take a brand, I don't know, like Old Spice. I'll use Old Spice. I used to work on Old Spice, right? Old Spice wants to connect with guys 18 to 34, guys 18 to 34, huge consumers of cannabis. So is there something you can produce for Old Spice where cannabis is a piece of it? They have a lot more money than most cannabis brands. So how do you put a little twist on it and think through who wants to be in cannabis and how can you connect them to the storyline?
Yeah, so Totino's, which I think is that Procter & Gamble, or what is Totino's? Is that, I think it's one of the big... Totino's is like little pizza rolls.
Pizza rolls.
Yeah, they're owned by one of the giant CPGs, but this 420, they did a little 420 ad, and it was really cute and
Because they're
funny.
getting on the bandwagon.
They're getting on the bandwagon,
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, good day, sir, is it 420? Oh, and they did this whole
Yeah.
thing.
I
And
mean, what
it was
better
very,
stoner food than like...
Exactly, and obviously there was the Munchie box for Jack in the Box, so... they're all, like you said, and their budgets on an
But that's
annual
an old
basis
but
would
that's
finance 20 people's companies,
But
so.
that's an old dynamic. That's the sort of like what we're trying to debunk
Well, true.
Is
So
that
they're
entire stoner
they're
culture.
so right.
I mean,
But so they're looking at that market. They're communicating the wrong way. But
well,
they're at
they're
least-
CB, they're huge. Like,
Well, there's more than one market.
Right.
Like any
Right.
brand.
Okay,
you know,
exactly.
There's a medical and a recreational market out there. Let's
and
be
within
real.
there, there's
And-
20
and
other
there's-
mini markets.
and
there's
so
people that
you know
wanna
what?
get wasted,
People are
and there's
stoned
people that
watching
wanna
TV.
just
They're going to buy your
There,
little.
there will be someone who's smoking weed
Pita
and
pockets.
want to buy the munchie box, and there'll be the rest of us who will never eat Jack in the Box. I mean,
Well,
there's that.
This
Well,
goes
we-
back to what Josh and I were talking about before the panel. Is that the people who are buying cannabis now are the stoner people, right? But all of a sudden, you're going to have
Is
a
everybody?
mass,
I don't think everybody's a stoner.
no, we're
not
talking
everyone.
about-
so a large portion of the
80%
market
of them
is
are-
stereotypical.
Stereotype.
Well, I mean, we're just saying that
Daily smokers.
the
is
daily
what you're saying.
smokers,
Okay.
whether
That's-
we call
need
them
to, like, qualify
categorized,
that.
yes, we're not
Okay.
categorizing them as stoner, but we're saying they're the endemic consumers.
Daily smokers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have a mass market coming
Like my
where now
panel.
you can.
Does anyone have a light? I'm a daily stoner.
And she knows the most about all of the stuff. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more if you want us to. I would like to hear from you guys because honestly, yeah, get up, talk. Is there a mic? Do we need a mic? Probably not.
Great panel, you guys. This was great. So I guess my question is for all of you. When it comes to working in media, what are the legal ramifications for, I mean, because you can't really do affiliate programs like you would do with Amazon
No.
because you can't.
Sure you can. Why can't you?
But
You
then
can't.
touch the plant, right? So
No.
You can until they shut you down.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
The FTC, the FDA, they can't regulate something that's federally illegal. So most of the big organizations that are there that will shut you down are only shutting down businesses that they are currently regulating and have laws written around. So you really only have to worry about the DEA, and they're not.
and like let's say it like there's really no like they don't have like one particular kind of company that they're looking at. It's a crapshoot, right?
Right. I mean, it's
So
it's,
yeah. But you know that's the Wild West, and that's part of the excitement of being in the business. Is like you might get away okay.
Facebook is a bigger challenge for you right now as a brand.
Yeah,
than
social media
than,
is
than the
tough.
FDA. You know, Facebook's self-regulations and Instagram and Google, who are deciding what and when can get on for whatever reason, whatever side of the bed they wake up that day. You know, people that are building businesses off Facebook, I would highly put a big warning flag up there.
Actually, will you give your opinion on like a great little breakdown of how like social versus like what people should do if they have a brand? I think that would be very
Well,
helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that if you go single platform marketing, right, you're all in on Facebook or on Instagram. You're just basically allowing a third party company to control your consumers and control your business. And it's tempting because you can get engagement and views, and that's where the audience is. But it's from a long tail perspective, it's not a good investment in my eyes, anyways. It's a piece of the overall strategy. But again, you're going to have bigger issues because Facebook just set a guideline that said if you're a cannabis brand, then they can shut you down at any given time for any given moment for any reason, on top of all the other rules they have that has to deal with sponsor content. So what is the FTC going to do, or the FCC? They're not even aware of what's happening yet. So anyways, my point is those are the bigger challenges than a government saying, hey, you're touching the plant or not.
Oh, please,
So,
yeah.
So,
uh-huh.
but I mean, like the major platforms right now are, let's say it's weed maps for the dispensaries and mass roots, I guess. I'm
No,
not really sure.
they don't exist anymore, but yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, can someone you think go against weed map, which is like 800 pounds?
Sure, Yelp, Google. I mean, those are going to be the people that are going to eat.
So
buy weed maps.
when the market opens up and it's recreational, and that's going to be the 3 to the 1 of medical, those folks don't know what Weed Maps is. So folks are going to need to gear up to sort of like the mainstreamization of how you position and frame your business and what outlets you want to get shine on. So I think those guys are going to lose some relevance. And I do think that there are other platforms, obviously, than Weed Maps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yelp's getting stronger.
And
SEO game at this point then?
It's a component.
It's a big component because obviously paid clicks are a lot tougher in this. It's a little minefield. So SEO is huge. Yeah. Yeah. Good question.
Oh, thank you for
when
asking
when
the
we're
question. And,
regulated,
like,
Weed Maps is not. I mean, they're just advertising. what do we call it? The regulated and tested market, not illicit or black market. We're going to call it the regulated and tested market. They're irrelevant. Right now, law enforcement is using weed maps, and elected officials are using weed maps to find that market and shut it down.
So I have a quick question for Dean. So Dean's the producer of ICBC, which is the International Cannabis Business Conference, and it's basically the best conference that is global. For anybody out there listening, what's the opportunity outside of the United States?
Well, it's actually it's huge, and right now the smart brands in our sector are sort of I think our biggest partners in the States have all migrated and all have aspirations to go abroad. You look at right now, frankly, the U.S. is because of our federal statutes is a bit fucked. We're behind the 8 ball. You got Canadians getting federally licensed permits to be able to produce and export. So is Israel. You've got like another 4 countries coming online in the next little bit, and then you have massive consumer markets. So we did an event in Berlin this past, I think, February, something like that.
April.
And it was phenomenal.
500 million people in Europe.
If you want to see honestly what this industry potentially, you have to go to one of his conferences. It'll blow your mind. It really will.
So,
This is not an
It's
advertisement,
like Cannes
but really
for
it's
weed.
pretty cool.
It's that massive. I'm telling you, you'll be like,
So-
wow, I can't imagine.
Because you got to get out of like our little world here of
But
US.
now-
Next
It's
one's
like
in
a global,
Hawaii.
it's a global conversation. It really is, and that's why I asked the
the
question.
next one is in Kauai, actually.
Kauai.
It's very good. So no, but
The state of
in
When
de-
is it, Dean?
In December, beginning of
December.
December, 1st through the 3rd of December. Realistically, right
And they
now,
have really great rates at the Hyatt. You guys should check it out. You can never get like a low hotel rate. Like
well done,
that
well
they
done,
do.
well done, Caroline. So-
Seriously, I can't go.
Go ahead.
Damn it.
Question.
Anyway, okay, yeah, let's take
Caroline,
questions. Okay, please.
Please.
Okay, right there first. Yeah, you. Oh wait, you and then you and then
Yeah.
you and then you. Okay, yes.
I do paid acquisition, Facebook and Google advertising for a lot of startups and companies. We've got a lot of pending opportunities in the cannabis industry, but as you know, Google doesn't allow advertising for cannabis per se. So I'm curious if we've heard of actually some people beginning to hack and get some loopholes in the paid advertising. So we're curious I'm curious what funnels or what approaches have you had seen successful?
Well, so one clue I'll give you is that we're in a very regulated space, and so words really matter. Words really, really matter as far as, again, sort of the wordsmithing your ads really matters. Yeah, and really matters.
It really matters.
Are those
What's your
words?
freebie? Here you go.
Yeah.
Ready?
Okay, Susan is. What's your name?
She's whipping
the-
weed out,
She's
guys.
the weed fairy.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
There you go.
If
Good
you ask a
question.
question, you get like a prize. Okay, you're next. This beautiful
We'll get
lady
you,
right
David.
here. This beautiful lady right here is
I want
next.
a question.
January 2018, it's going to be legal here. We know it's happened
Wow.
over a year ago.
Whatever that means.
Maybe.
Medical stuff going away now?
No.
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 Yes.
No.
Okay,
No.
Susan's
Yes.
like
No.
got a really good perspective. Talk.
Let's tell Susan's perspective.
I'm just saying, one of the reasons I wasn't thrilled about Prop 64 was because it left this gaping hole to let the state legislature alter the law, which a voter initiative to me is sacred. It's like we, the voters, got this on the ballot and this is what we want. And the legislature can't alter it. But with Prop 64, they can. And obviously, these regulators, they've got 360 pages. UMA was like 366 pages. So they have to take that legislation and turn it into regulation, which is thousands of pages. So you think the state is going to take these thousands of pages for medical and these thousands of pages for recreational and have these separate agencies when they have this loophole in Prop 64 where they can do whatever they want? They are going to get rid of medical.
Yeah.
They don't want it. It's not taxed as heavily. It's a joke in their mind. And that's why I wasn't happy with Prop 64.
But we don't know that.
But we
Well,
had to,
that's
we had
her-
to, but I'm glad that it passed because
Well, exactly.
with
Okay.
the election and the way things went down, you got it, sister.
Okay, over there in the guy with
David.
dark hair.
Oh,
Yeah, you.
Then we'll get you, David. All right, sorry.
And then David. Are you David?
Yeah.
Okay, you're next.
You guys mentioned big tobacco, big alcohol, and big pharma. When do you think when big agricultural will start to?
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
Monsanto's got patents and products, and yeah,
Harborside.
yeah, of course, yeah,
Just saying.
yeah.
Okay, no, David's
Morris.
next.
But wait. Can I say that the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Amber Morris was at my event, the State of Cannabis, and she was mentioning the canopy size, which I don't think they have really put it in stone yet, but they definitely don't want gigantic canopies. They are all about nurturing small farmers.
David is next.
Oh, sorry. I could.
Or you're David, yeah? Okay.
So content can be a lot of things. So we've got video, let's say on text as well. And in this space, whether it could be recipes, travel, lifestyle, news, what type of content subject matters do you think are best resonating?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Get a little more precise.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you it's everything because
Well,
you won't
because-
even
so-
believe the like little nuance, like the small little verticals that
The reason
sell to
is
people.
because you've got literally you're talking about your demographic is as wide and broad as
Exactly.
and so just because of that, being an ad professional, that's what
It's-
it is.
it's-
You just
So
got a
lifestyle, all
broad market.
Well, it's like what Howard.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
No, it's two things. It's who's your audience. You got to target who your audience is. Is it stoners? Is it adults? Is it old hippies
Is it young hippies?
or young hippies?
Okay. I don't
And
get-
the second thing is the story. Does the story resonate? It doesn't matter what you're selling in the media. You have to tell a good story. If you can't tell a good story, no one's going to come. No one's going to care.
Yeah. There's two more
I'm a
things.
publicist. Everything. I can sell everything. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I would say two more things. One is if you remember the old Howard Stern line where they were reading and they said, people that like Howard Stern listen for 20 minutes. So what about the people that hated him? They listened for 40. So people that have a problem with cannabis are watching as much content as people that don't or that are interested in it, number one. Number two, I think the biggest challenge, and we kind of touched on this earlier, and this is a roundabout answer, or maybe not, is that younger adults, and when I say younger adults, I'm saying 18, the millennials, they are the first generation that is not taking cannabis as part of their identity. So if you look at, I'm in my 40s, and you look at my parents' generation, when we smoked, it was not just we consumed, it became part of our identity. So you became a hippie, or you became a deadhead, or you
stoner.
you became a stoner. That was it. It's just coffee for them. So
Correct.
they're smoking
They don't
and they're
drink.
drinking
They don't
sometimes,
drink.
but whatever they're doing, it's like I happen to smoke and I'm drinking coffee. So if you communicate to the millennials the same way you communicate to someone in their 40s and certainly someone in their 70s, you're dead. You're losing them, and you have no idea how to communicate because they do not self-identify as a cannabis consumer. It's
part of their lifestyle.
It is just part of their thing.
Yeah, totally.
They self-identify with the shoes they wear more than necessarily being a smoker.
So
I think one of
5
the
minutes left, so-
elephants that we're not addressing that's in this room is what does the MPAA think about this? What are they going to do? You guys are creating content in the cannabis space. How are they going to rate you? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the
Well,
answer
if you
either.
smoke a
Like, how do
cigarette-
you?
if
But
you
Susan,
smoke-
you brought that up. I mean, like, that's probably like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, they're probably like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? You need to give
Well,
some more information
a
here.
long time ago, I made a very independent film, and I found out that if you say, I'm going to fuck you up, that you can get an
No, it's not correct.
Ask
13.
Michelle knows. Michelle's
And
the
then,
guy that.
but if you say,
Excuse
I
the
want to
lo-
fuck you, then you're an R.
No, the ratings are real simple. You smoke a cigarette, you immediately get PG-13.
PG.
If you smoke a lot, it goes up to 17. 4 fucks, you're at 17.
Any kind of fuck?
Four?
Only 4
12
fucks?
fucks are on
Violent
Pornhub,
or
but that's a
sexual?
different.
You
That's a
say-
different.
You say fuck 4 times.
Terrible.
You're
Oh my
17.
God.
So, but
Okay,
what about
so,
cannabis?
oh my God, there's so many. Okay,
That is great.
go ahead, right here.
That is great fucking
Recently,
knowledge.
they had an episode of Disjointed where Netflix was marketing their cannabis
Right.
as a strain. Do you see, like they do Orange is the New Black as a strain for a pop-up store? Do you see that being a trend where all of the others, The Wire, anybody at HBO, Game of Thrones?
It was brilliant, but the problem was it wasn't wide enough
Totally.
and it wasn't followed enough. But I thought it was a brilliant marketing.
It was a great PR stunt. I mean,
Great
they're,
PR
you know,
stunt.
of course.
Exactly. That's exactly
it's,
what it was.
But here's the beauty, right? It's still intellectual property. So why would you not monetize IP through cannabis long term?
That's
I mean,
exactly right.
at a certain point, there will be ways for Netflix to have Orange is the New Black, I don't know, edibles or something like that. Does it make sense now? No way, because it's not enough
Halloween,
money.
Halloween candy.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay,
but
next.
yeah.
Right there. I know. Go ahead.
Yes, you said you were a converter, but you didn't touch on what had converted. If you wouldn't mind.
That was to you.
I'm sorry. Susan.
Sorry. Oh, what?
Yeah,
Sorry.
You said that you were a converter. You had been converted, but you didn't touch on what had converted you.
So I was the young women's president in the Mormon church, and I had small children. So I was like, when they asked me to do this job, the Mormon church is all volunteerism. And so it was like asking me to do a 30-hour-a-week job. And I was like, they said, Jesus said that you should do this. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Can you ask him again? Because that doesn't make sense to me. So I was doing that and planning all these activities and events. And we were playing broom hockey in the gym. And one of the kids tripped me. And I slammed into the cinder block wall. And I had a migraine headache that lasted 2 years. And my Mormon doctors just gave me more and more Vicodin and opiates. And I was going through a divorce. I had 3 small children that I had to raise. And I didn't want to live anymore with the pain. And my neighbor was growing cannabis in her yard. And Prop 215 had just passed. And she said, you know, it might help you. And I knew that if it did, that I would lose my family and my entire community, but I didn't have a choice. I had to stay alive for my children. And I made that choice. And I realized that, I mean, I had some teenage kids that were smoking across the street from me, and I called the cops and I was like, they're smoking drugs. And the cops were like, well, is it crack or is it marijuana? I was like, I don't know, it's drugs. Get over here and arrest these kids. You know, that's how I felt about cannabis. And I knew once I found out that I haven't had a migraine since. And I knew that I had to help other people keep smoking every day.
Yeah. Well, she's
medical.
amazing. Okay,
It's
this is
medical.
the last question right here, and if you want to talk to us outside, we'll be outside smoking. Right here.
Yeah, man.
And I actually made a drink with it that I was going to test market it with, and I combined it with turmeric and ginger and African moringa, and I can't tell you the stuff that makes it taste good, but I actually helped a patient. He's gone since then. He was dying the day I met him.
What do you do for work?
He came back. He got 4 extra years to his
What do you do for work?
Right now, I'm acting and to save my life.
But what do you do? Were you a nurse?
No, I wasn't.
You were just a friend.
I taught schools, and I'm a gourmet culinary artist, and I make organic cookies, honey lemonade.
This is the great stories that we hear every day. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you.
that was
That's
just
great.
awesome. You got to get the Cannabis Cocktail book. A friend of mine, Warren Bobrow. So we have to wrap up. You guys can talk to us outside. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.